The congressional hearing room buzzed with tension as Pam Bondi, the former Florida Attorney General, entered through the heavy oak doors. The spotlight caught her confident stride as she approached the witness table, her navy suit crisp against the mahogany backdrop. Just moments earlier, Willem Dafoe and Jim Carrey had dominated the room with their celebrity presence. Their testimonies on environmental policy drawing appreciative murmurs from the packed gallery. Dafoe leaned toward Carrey, whispering something that made both men smirk as Bondi arranged her documents. The microphone caught Dafoe's dismissive comment. "Another politician who doesn't understand science? This should be quick." Carrey nodded, his famous elastic face settling into an expression of barely concealed contempt. As cameras flashed and the committee chairman introduced her, Bondi's eyes never wavered. The Hollywood stars expected to intimidate this conservative woman with their fame and liberal credentials. What they didn't know was that Bondi had arrived with evidence that would transform this routine hearing into a moment of reckoning. Within minutes, these celebrated actors would sit in stunned silence as their carefully constructed narratives collapsed before millions of viewers. Before we dive into this remarkable confrontation between Hollywood royalty and one fearless attorney, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more stories of truth prevailing against all odds. Pam Bondi had built her reputation as Florida's Attorney General from 2011 to 2019, known for her tough stance on consumer protection and human trafficking. The daughter of a mayor and former city councilman, she had learned politics at the family dinner table, but had forged her own path through law school and years as a prosecutor. At 54, her blonde hair framed a face that could shift from warm Southern charm to steely determination in an instant, a quality that had served her well in contentious legal battles. Willem Dafoe, with his distinctive angular features and intensity that had made him perfect for villainous roles, had transitioned in recent years to environmental activism. The four-time Oscar nominee had leveraged his Hollywood credibility to advocate for climate policies that were increasingly affecting industries across America. His testimony that morning had been passionate and polished, delivered with the same intensity he brought to his most acclaimed performances. Jim Carrey, once known primarily for his comedic roles, had reinvented himself as a political artist and advocate. His expressive face, now more often set in serious contemplation than comedic contortion, had given weight to his testimony about corporate responsibility in environmental matters. His social media following of millions amplified his every statement, and his paintings criticizing conservative figures regularly went viral. Both actors had been invited to speak about proposed regulations that would significantly impact energy production in southern states, including Bondi's home state of Florida. Their star power had been deliberately calculated to overshadow opposition testimony and to generate favorable headlines for the committee's majority. What was at stake transcended the policy details being debated. This hearing represented a larger cultural confrontation between celebrity influence and governmental expertise, between coastal elite perspectives and the practical concerns of states dependent on traditional energy sectors. The committee room had become a battlefield in America's ideological divide. For Bondi, this wasn't just another hearing. The proposed regulations would devastate thousands of Florida families whose livelihoods depended on industries targeted by the celebrity's testimony. More importantly, she had uncovered concerning connections between the actors' environmental organizations and foreign interests that stood to benefit financially from American energy restrictions. As Bondi arranged her papers at the witness table, both actors regarded her with the confident dismissal of men accustomed to commanding rooms. Dafoe's intense gaze and Carrey's barely suppressed smirk suggested they viewed her as simply another obstacle to be charmed or intimidated into submission. The committee chairman, Senator James Whitfield, a longtime ally of entertainment industry donors, gave the actors a conspicuously friendly introduction. "We've heard compelling testimony from two of America's most informed environmental advocates," he said, gesturing toward Dafoe and Carrey. "Now we'll hear from the minority witness, Ms. Bondi." His emphasis on minority was subtle but unmistakable, positioning her as an afterthought, a token opposition voice easily dismissed. The stage was set for what the chairman and celebrities expected to be a predictable exchange that would generate the desired headlines. Hollywood Stars School, former AG on climate policy. What none of them realized was that Pam Bondi had not come to defend. She had come to expose. "Thank you, Mr. Chairman," Bondi began, her voice carrying the practiced precision of a former prosecutor. "I appreciate the committee's interest in environmental policy that affects millions of Americans, including many in my home state of Florida." Her opening statement seemed conventional enough, but observers noted she hadn't once glanced at her prepared remarks. Instead, her eyes moved between Dafoe and Carrey with unsettling directness. Before addressing the proposed regulations, "I believe this committee deserves complete transparency about the interests represented before it today," she continued. The subtle shift in her tone caused Senator Whitfield to look up from his phone. "Mr. Dafoe, you testified earlier about your organization, Environmental Artists Alliance, and its research on coastal impacts. Could you clarify for the committee who funds this research?" Her question came with a smile, but her eyes remained focused. Dafoe leaned forward confidently. "We're supported by thousands of individual donors committed to saving our planet, along with grants from established environmental foundations." "Specific foundations, Mr. Dafoe?" Bondi pressed. "Perhaps the Ocean View Foundation or Global Energy Transition Fund?" A flicker of surprise crossed Defoe's face. "Among others, yes. They're respected environmental organizations." Bondi nodded, as if this confirmed something. "And Mr. Carrey, your Conscious Planet Initiative shares office space with Mr. Defoe's organization in Los Angeles, correct?" Carrey's famous face registered confusion. "We collaborate on some projects. I'm not involved in administrative details." The chairman interrupted, his annoyance visible. "Miss Bondi, the funding of these private organizations seems irrelevant to the regulatory matters before us. With respect, Mr. Chairman, when witnesses advocate for regulations that would eliminate thousands of American jobs, the committee should understand if foreign interests are influencing that advocacy." Bondi's voice remained measured but firm. She removed a document from her portfolio and held it up. "I have here financial records showing that both the Ocean View Foundation and Global Energy Transition Fund received over $40 million from So Pacific Energy Corporation, a Chinese state-controlled enterprise that dominates the rare earth mineral market essential for solar panels and batteries." The room fell silent. Cameras pivoted toward Dafoe and Carrey, capturing their stunned expressions. "Furthermore," Bondi continued, sliding another document across to the committee clerk, "internal communications from these foundations explicitly discuss funding American celebrities' environmental advocacy as a strategy to create regulatory barriers for U.S. energy production." Willem Dafoe's face tightened, his natural intensity now directed at Bondi. "That's a ridiculous conspiracy theory. Our advocacy is based on science, not foreign influence." "Science funded by your organization's largest donor, a foreign competitor seeking market advantage?" Bondi countered. "A relevant fact omitted from your testimony." Senator Whitfield banged his gavel. "Ms. Bondi, these accusations are serious and should be properly investigated, not sprung in a public hearing." "I agree they're serious, Mr. Chairman. That's why I've already provided these documents to the Department of Justice and the Committee on Foreign Investment." Bondi's calm delivery made the statement even more impactful. Jim Carrey, his expressive face now uncharacteristically rigid, leaned toward his microphone. "This is a character assassination attempt. I've spent years creating art and advocacy around environmental issues because I care about future generations, not because of who funds what foundation." Bondi nodded sympathetically. "Your personal convictions aren't in question, Mr. Carrey. But when celebrities lend their influence to causes without investigating the interest behind them, they can become unwitting tools for foreign economic warfare against American workers." The tension escalated as Bondi displayed a chart showing projected job losses by state if the regulations were implemented as written. Florida alone would lose 26,000 jobs in the first year, jobs that would effectively be transferred to Chinese manufacturing facilities that have far fewer environmental controls than American companies. Defoe's patience snapped, his voice taking on the menacing quality familiar to moviegoers. "This is exactly the kind of fossil fuel industry propaganda that's destroying our planet. These job loss numbers are manipulated scare tactics." "These numbers," Bondi replied evenly, "come from your own organization's internal economic impact study, a study you chose not to share with this committee." She slid another document forward. Page 12 specifically acknowledges these job loss projections while describing them as necessary transitional costs. The gallery erupted in murmurs. Senator Whitfield's gavel banged repeatedly as he struggled to maintain order. Carrey, visibly flustered, attempted to redirect. The climate crisis demands immediate action, regardless of short-term economic adjustments. Our children's future is at stake. I agree our children's future is at stake, Bondi nodded, including their future in an America where working families can afford heating bills and where our national security isn't compromised by dependence on foreign energy sources. As photographers captured the increasing discomfort on the celebrities' faces, Bondi methodically continued presenting evidence that neither man had been prepared to address. The hearing had transformed from a planned showcase of Hollywood environmental advocacy into an uncomfortable examination of the complex geopolitical and economic interests behind climate policy. By the time Senator Whitfield called a recess, social media was exploding with clips of the exchange. What had begun as another day of celebrity testimony had become something far more consequential, and the most dramatic moments were yet to come. When the hearing resumed after a tense 15-minute recess, the atmosphere had changed dramatically. Additional press had crammed into the room, alerted by the viral clips already circulating online. Willem Dafoe and Jim Carrey returned to their seats looking noticeably less confident, each now flanked by hastily summoned legal advisors, whispering urgent counsel. Senator Whitfield tried to regain control of the proceedings. Let's return to the actual environmental regulations proposed in Bill S-247, which is the purpose of today's hearing. Mr. Chairman, Bondi responded, these regulations cannot be properly evaluated without understanding the comprehensive evidence I've brought forward. Her voice remained calm and deliberate. The committee deserves to know that the economic models presented earlier contained deliberate omissions. She then displayed a series of slides showing side-by-side comparisons of the celebrities' testimony with contradicting evidence from their own organization's internal documents. Mr. Dafoe testified that these regulations would create more jobs than they eliminate, yet his organization's private investor presentation from March, she held up a document with the Environmental Artists Alliance letterhead, promises donors that restricting American energy production will transfer market dominance to our international partners. Dafoe's intense gaze faltered. He leaned toward his attorney, who shook his head slightly. I'm not responsible for every document produced by organizations I support, Dafoe finally responded, his distinctive voice now diminished in volume. My testimony reflects my personal commitment to environmental protection. Bondi nodded understandingly. Celebrity influence is powerful precisely because Americans trust your sincerity. That makes it all the more concerning when that influence is leveraged by entities working against American interests. She turned to her next exhibit, displaying emails between Carrey's initiative and Chinese solar manufacturing representatives, discussing how new U.S. regulations would eliminate competition from American energy producers. Mr. Carrey, were you aware that your organization was coordinating with foreign manufacturers who stood to gain billions from these regulations? Carrey's face, famous for its remarkable expressiveness, now showed genuine shock. These appear to be communications from junior staff that never reached me. I don't endorse or recognize these statements. The decisive moment came when Bondi presented her most damaging evidence, a video compilation showing both celebrities at private fundraisers making statements starkly contradicting their public testimony. The room fell silent as Willem Dafoe appeared on screen at what appeared to be an exclusive gathering, saying, "These regulations aren't really about climate. They're about shifting the energy balance of power. Sometimes you have to present a noble public face for a complex strategy." Next came footage of Carrey at a different event. The public narrative is about saving polar bears, but between us, this is about controlling which nations lead the next energy economy. America had its century of energy dominance. As the video ended, cameras captured the celebrities' expressions, Dafoe stone-faced with anger, Carrey looking genuinely distressed. I don't recall those statements, Dafoe said coldly. This appears to be selectively edited. Bondi responded without hesitation. The unedited recordings have been provided to the committee, along with authentication certificates from the forensic analysts who verified them. Senator Whitfield, now visibly concerned about the hearing's direction, attempted to intervene. Ms. Bondi, while these allegations are serious, this committee— Mr. Chairman, Bondi interrupted with respectful firmness, when public policy is shaped by celebrity influence, the authenticity of that influence matters. Americans deserve to know whether the jobs they might lose are being sacrificed for genuine environmental progress or for foreign economic advantage. She then delivered her most powerful move, presenting evidence that the proposed regulations included technical specifications mysteriously identical to Chinese manufacturing standards, effectively excluding American-made components from compliance. Section 342 of the proposed regulations requires energy storage systems to use cathode formulations matching patent CN207D 34528L, a Chinese government-held patent, she explained, displaying the relevant documents side by side. This effectively mandates Chinese-made components by law. The room erupted. Senator Whitfield's gavel couldn't restore order as committee members from both parties began urgently reviewing the documents. Several senators immediately huddled with their staff, examining the regulation language with newfound concern. Willem Dafoe and Jim Carrey sat in stunned silence, their prepared talking points having become irrelevant in the face of Bondi's methodical dismantling of the narrative they had come to present. The actors who had arrived as authoritative voices on environmental policy had been exposed as potentially unwitting participants in a complex geopolitical and economic strategy. A Republican senator leaned into his microphone. Mr. Chairman, I move that we suspend consideration of these regulations pending a full investigation of the foreign influence concerns presented today. Remarkably, a Democratic senator seconded the motion. These allegations transcend partisan positions on environmental policy. If American regulations are being manipulated to benefit foreign manufacturers, that demands immediate scrutiny. The chairman, realizing the hearing had completely escaped his control, had no choice but to acknowledge the bipartisan concern. Without objection, consideration of the regulations will be postponed pending investigation. Cameras captured the historic reversal, a hearing that began with celebrity testimony, commanding the narrative had transformed into a powerful exposure of hidden influences, with Pam Bondi standing resolute as Dafoe and Carrey sat silenced by evidence they couldn't counter. Within hours of the hearing's dramatic conclusion, the story exploded across traditional and social media. Hashtags #BondiExposed and #HollywoodInfluence trended nationwide. News chyrons captured the essence of the confrontation. Former AG Bondi challenges Hollywood on foreign influence, and celebrity silenced, hearing reveals hidden connections. Video of Willem Dafoe and Jim Carrey sitting in the stunned silence as Bondi revealed the Chinese patent specification became the defining image of the hearing. Memes spread across social platforms, contrasting the actors' confident arrivals with their speechless departure. Major networks that initially hadn't planned to cover the routine committee hearing now dedicated substantial segments to analyzing what had transpired. Legal experts appeared on panels discussing the implications of foreign influence in regulatory processes, while entertainment reporters covered the potential damage to the celebrities' advocacy reputations. What we witnessed today was extraordinary, said a former Justice Department official on CNN. Pam Bondi didn't just challenge celebrity testimony, she exposed potentially serious national security concerns about foreign entities shaping American regulations through cultural influence operations. For Pam Bondi, the aftermath brought both acclaim and intense scrutiny. Conservative media celebrated her as a fearless truth-teller who had stood up to Hollywood elites. Bondi showed that substance trumps celebrity, declared one headline. Meanwhile, progressive outlets questioned her motives while acknowledging the seriousness of her evidence. Bondi's foreign influence claims require investigation. Despite partisan background, read a more measured analysis. The Department of Justice confirmed it had received Bondi's documentation and was reviewing the information with appropriate seriousness. 3 separate congressional committees announced plans to investigate the foreign connections she had exposed. Willem Dafoe and Jim Carrey responded differently to the fallout. Dafoe issued a terse statement through his representative. I stand by my environmental advocacy and reject any implication that my positions have been influenced by improper considerations. He declined further interviews and canceled several planned appearances. Carrey, characteristically more expressive, posted a lengthy statement on social media acknowledging he may have been naive about the complexities behind the causes I've championed, he wrote. My passion for environmental protection remains genuine, but I now recognize the importance of understanding all interests involved in policy advocacy. His candor earned both criticism and respect, with many commentators noting the difference between his approach and Dafoe's defiance. The Environmental Artists Alliance and Conscious Planet Initiative faced immediate fallout. Major donors suspended their support pending investigations, and several board members resigned as internal reviews were launched into the foreign funding connections Bondi had exposed. Perhaps most significantly, the regulations that had seemed destined for approval were now subject to intensive review. The specific provisions Bondi had highlighted, particularly those with the suspicious technical specifications, were flagged for complete revision. A bipartisan group of senators announced legislation to require transparency in foreign funding of advocacy organizations that testify before Congress. This isn't about environmental policy itself, explained a moderate Democratic senator who had previously supported the regulations. It's about ensuring American policy decisions are made for American interests, not shaped by disguised foreign influence campaigns. Policy experts noted that the incident represented a larger concern about celebrity influence in complex policy matters. When famous personalities lend their credibility to technical issues they may not fully understand, it creates vulnerability to manipulation, observed a political science professor. Bondi exposed not just potential foreign influence, but the dangers of elevating celebrity opinion over subject matter expertise. 6 months after the hearing, its impact continued to reverberate through regulatory processes and advocacy circles. The Department of Justice announced preliminary findings confirming several of Bondi's key allegations, including the Chinese patent specification embedded in the regulations and the coordinated funding of American advocacy groups by foreign entities. Pam Bondi, who had largely stayed out of the public eye since the hearing, gave a single interview reflecting on what had transpired. This was never about targeting individuals or undermining environmental protection, she explained. It was about ensuring that American workers and American interests aren't sacrificed to foreign competitors hiding behind noble causes. When asked if she had anticipated the hearing's dramatic outcome, Bondi smiled slightly. I came prepared with facts. In my experience as a prosecutor, facts ultimately matter more than fame or political pressure. I simply trusted that truth, presented clearly, would speak for itself. The legacy of the confrontation extended beyond the specific regulations or celebrities involved. It sparked a broader national conversation about influence operations in the digital age, how foreign interests could leverage American cultural figures to shape policy without direct lobbying that would trigger traditional foreign agent registration requirements. New guidelines were implemented for congressional testimony, requiring witnesses to disclose potential conflicts of interest and funding sources before appearing before committees. Several environmental organizations voluntarily implemented transparency measures around their international funding connections, seeking to distinguish legitimate global cooperation from hidden influence operations. For ordinary Americans watching these developments unfold, the confrontation between Bondi and the Hollywood stars represented something more fundamental than policy disagreements. It demonstrated that in a healthy democracy, even the most powerful voices can be held accountable when presented with documented facts. The hearing that began with celebrity confidence and ended with evidence-based exposure became a case study in civics education programs, illustrating how democratic processes, while imperfect, contain mechanisms for truth to emerge when someone has the courage and preparation to present it effectively. As viewers continue to share and discuss this remarkable confrontation between Hollywood influence and fact-based accountability, one thing remains clear. Sometimes the most powerful moment in public discourse isn't a shouting match or viral soundbite, but the silence that falls when carefully constructed narratives collapse under the weight of undeniable evidence. If you found this breakdown of celebrity influence and political accountability enlightening, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. We'll continue bringing you in-depth analysis of the most significant confrontations shaping America's future. Your support helps us deliver these important stories that mainstream media often overlooks.